That's how it's gone for all the previous videos. Have you seen any of the previous videos at all, guys?
I haven't yet, I must admit, no.
Well, there's only been a couple thus far. I did one with Kit Power. Of course, I inherited the My Life in Horror project from him, and that's kind of where this came from. It's an expansion of that particular project, and I did one with Lex Jones, and that was great fun. I need to get my head in gear because I've got so many all lined up that I'm kind of double booking people and getting it all wrong, which is not ideal.
Well, what a privilege to be the third in the row. That's wicked.
Oh, it's absolutely my
thanks so much.
My pleasure. I think, what was the last one we did, Jonathan? What was we did?
We've only actually done one. We did the Hound for Lovecraft. We've talked about doing loads of different ones, but just haven't got around to it. But I'm sure we will.
Yeah, it just never occurred. I know we've spoken extensively about doing Jam.
Yeah, definitely.
That's gotta be done. That has got to be done. I mean, for me, that is it is still apex comedy.
Yeah, and it's one of the few things when I first watched it that gave me a genuine nightmare. Two nightmares, in fact.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those very, very strange products, isn't it? Did you see when Channel 4 did their 100 greatest shows way, way, way back in the early 2000s? They did a series of 100 greatest comedy moments, 100 greatest scary moments, 100 greatest romantic moments, and so on and so forth, as voted for by the British public. Always going to go right, relying on that. And Jam was one of those very, very strange products that featured on multiple different...
scariest and funniest.
It got both some of the scariest and some of the funniest. The scariest one was the red wine, fantastic. I wish I had a glass myself, actually, but I don't at the moment. But the sketch that was in the scariest one was the one with the plumber who comes to.
I knew you were going to say the pipes. Yeah,
you showed that to me.
Yeah,
that's messed up.
It's so. Oh, honestly, I love that show. I love the way it it's that very, very fine line between funny and disturbing.
Yeah, and often both at the same time.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, I love that you're laughing at something that you really feel like you shouldn't be laughing at.
Oh, I got way past that. Maybe when I first saw it. A Serbian film's become a comedy these days.
Going to hell for this type stuff.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I mean, that's kind of a good start because really one of the things I love to talk about on this show is influence, influence and inspiration. Where did it begin and what is it about this material that inspires you and that engages your imagination?
You want to take this? Because we've got both separate answers, obviously.
Yeah,
this is going to be really interesting.
Not that long ago. For me, my twin sister, I have a twin sister, a younger sister, and an older sister, just all girls in our family. And we were with a babysitter. My parents went out. The babysitter was explicitly told to not show us Pet Sematary.
No.
Yeah. And she did.
What?
It must have been. I don't know when it came out on DVD or VHS.
I mean, it was. I think it's an 89 or.
It came out in 89.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but I don't know if we saw it on a VHS or if they played it on television or something. But yeah, she showed it to us, and
oh my God! I mean, as
we were 8 or something or 9. Wow. That's my earliest memory, and I feel like that just cemented. At least my twin sister and I, our interest in dark things.
I'm not surprised because as dark things go, that's dark.
Yeah,
for a child,
I know that gave me nightmares.
I mean, I love my horror so much, and like you, I saw a lot when I was young. But Pet Sematary, wow.
Yeah, it's still creepy when I watch it now.
I mean, these days it'd be seen as ableism, I'm sure, making the sister, one of the most terrifying aspects of the movie. But it is undeniable when you're a kid, that nightmarish confrontation with your own mortality and such a twisted body.
Well, right, it's like a human monster.
Yeah,
something in a form you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's just the nihilism of that. I mean, it derives from the original story, of course. I mean, King didn't actually publish it for the longest time, did he? Because he wrote it and then put it away in a drawer and said, nah, that's
he said it was
too
dark
much.
even for him, didn't he?
Well,
I mean,
not ready for this.
That's the funny thing about King, isn't it? I mean, like a lot of his horror is the horror of hope. Ultimately, it goes to places. I mean, you read The Shining and whatnot, and it definitely goes to places. But there's always a sort of redemptive element to it. There's something that comes out the other end. Pet Sematary, nothing comes out. It's just filth and foulness and
come
nihilism.
out, but they probably should have stayed put.
Yeah,
definitely.
like the neighbour's ankle. Doesn't the neighbour's ankle come out at one point?
Oh, because Gage cuts it with the scalpel. Yeah, that pains me.
Yeah,
that sequence. That's the one that people always remember. That's the one that if you are, the people who saw it on VHS, saw it when they were kids. That's the sequence that people always remember. Yeah. The slicing of the tendon.
Yes, and Gage was just terrifying too. Just a creepy little boy.
So
like they cast him so perfectly. Yeah. So it started there for me, and then we just loved Halloween. The school we went to, our elementary school, always played up Halloween as a holiday, and so we always did activities with that. We used to build mini haunted houses, my sisters and I. My grandmother used to cackle like a witch during Halloween. She had this amazing cackle, which I think my little sister can do now. Yeah, Rachel can cackle.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
So it's just something when we were young that was always around and played up, and then my twin and I got into horror movie marathons when Blockbuster was a big thing when we were preteens. And yeah, we just fell in love like really early on and couldn't get rid of it, really.
It's a funny thing, but that seems to almost be a common thread. It's the fact, it's the availability of media when we were kids, right? I mean, I think I'm right in saying that we are all children of the sort of VHS revolution, when home media became just everywhere. It was part of our growing up, right? And horror was so huge during that.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I never really saw any adult horrors on VHS. We always used to rent movies around Halloween and around other times, but it was always like the kids' ones. There was a 70s cartoon called The Groovy Ghoulies, which I always wanted to rent whenever I had the chance, and things like Ernest Scared Stupid and stuff like that. But I think it wasn't a horror house. Like my mum used to read Dean Koontz, and she loved Dennis Wheatley back in the day, and she used to talk to me about it, but she would never really let me experience it. So the first time I remember being absolute, like that mixture of being terrified and fascinated, was seeing the Medusa scene in the Ray Harryhausen.
Yes, Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans. Yeah.
Apparently, it made me cry, and I was like hiding behind the couch, but it stayed in my head so clearly ever since. And it's still like, even if I look at it now, because it was one of those really early memories, it still chills me.
I think it is, that sequence is shot and framed like a horror film. Yeah, it's utterly beautiful. I mean, almost everything Harryhausen did was genius, and every sequence in that film has something going for it. But that one, the lighting, the shadows, the movement of the Medusa, it's just beautiful.
And the sound effects of her tail as it rattles, echoes through the chamber. Yeah, so cool. But yeah, I had quite a lot of early experiences with horror. Like, as I said, I didn't really grow up in a horror house particularly, but I was always so desperate to see the things that I was not really supposed to. I had this deep attraction from an early age to that. And like I say, my mum didn't want me to experience that sort of stuff until a teacher of mine recognized that I could write. Mrs. Lamb, really lovely woman, when I was like 10 years old, asked my mum to come in and said, okay, Jonathon is better at English at this stage than the other kids, so I'm going to set him separate stuff. And I've got a list of books that I recommend you let him read. And there was like
Mrs. Lamb.
And there was like Stephen King on there.
I may steal that name, by the way. Mrs. Lamb is awesome. What a great name for a character, right?
Yeah, it sounds so innocent too, and
doesn't it?
You.
Yeah, he was in a Church of England school as well.
Oh wow, this just gets better and better. Church of England teacher called Mrs. Lamb. Are you kidding? Are you kidding?
No, not at all. No.
Actually, no. If you wrote that, you wouldn't get away with it. If you wrote that, you wouldn't get away with it. People would say, "Oh, come on."
Yes, like they went there to teach, and then they got to select names based on where they were working.
I mean, there was also Mr. Salmon, but then again, the fish and the loaves, maybe, I guess.
Lamb and salmon, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So from very, very early on, I always wanted to see more, and thankfully, that was a way that my mum could justify it to herself. Oh, well, the teacher says that it'll help him become a better pupil.
So it's okay. It's all right. It's been ratified by the teacher.
It worked out all right.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't killed anyone yet. I've just done it in the pages.
Didn't build a serial killer or anything.
No, absolutely not.
Well,
and it snowballed.
That's one of the funny things, isn't it? I mean, another thing that kind of inspired this series is the fact that if you are a fan of horror, or if you create horror, or if you're involved with horror in any which way, one of the questions you're always asked and consistently asked by people is, why horror? Right? Why this material? And the funny thing is, it seems to me that they're not really asking what they think they're asking. What they're actually asking is, they're actually not asking anything. They're making a statement, which is, this does not chime with my preconceptions of who you are. You know,
how could you? Is the question.
Yeah, it is as much an accusation as it is a question, isn't it?
You seem to be a relatively nice, stable human being, so why do you have this? Yeah. And it's a very, very fascinating tension to me, because you never get like why science fiction or why romance or why fantasy, but horror very much so.
Yeah, I think it was in Night Shift, or it was one of the first Stephen King books that I read. And at the back of it, in like the afterword, he says that he often gets asked at parties, why do you write such horrible things? And his answer is, why do you assume I've got a choice?
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't really pick it. We're just drawn to certain things.
I so fell into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like I've lived a fairly charmed life. I haven't had, I've never been like mistreated or anything like that. I don't have an especially dark past. Mm-hmm. I've always been just drawn to it. Maybe as a way to, I don't know, accept the world as it is, or like challenge yourself. I don't really know. It's not really something that I've ever thought about too much.
I mean, perhaps it's a draw to like taste a bit of something that you don't have exposure to.
Yeah.
Especially in your case where your life hasn't been, that hard compared to some other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I always like grossing people out as well.
There's that too. There's a fire to it,
right? That is a fun part of it, but I think no matter what you write, you would like just putting something down, creating something that gets an impact, makes an impact and gets a reaction out of people, makes people feel and experience things. I think that's one of the best parts of it. But
yeah, absolutely. And horror's kind of tailor-made for that, isn't it? It's tailor-made because it can be so visceral, The fact that it gets people feeling emotions that they otherwise don't get to experience in a safe space.
Yes, exactly.
It kind of exposes them and you to parts of yourself that you otherwise wouldn't have, or you wouldn't know until something very, very unpleasant actually happens to you.
I think that's definitely true in your case. I think you write from the heart when you write your stories. A lot of them are very, very, I think, personal to the way your own experiences, the way that you view the world.
Heavily veiled, but yes.
Maybe not so much.
Face made.
I think mine is more detached from my own experiences, and that does play into what we were just saying. Like, I guess I have written to purge certain feelings before, but generally speaking, I don't think it's especially personal to me. I think it's a way to have fun.
Well, a fun poke around in the dark. It's like, what happens if?
Yeah,
absolutely. And this is the funny thing, isn't it? I mean, a lot of the time, the people who ask that question don't actually realize that they do expose themselves to darker materials too. It's just packaged in a different way. One of the things I like to respond with is, well, do you read newspapers? Do you watch news at all? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well,
it's all bad stuff.
That is way worse.
Yeah,
that is
sensationalism in media.
Way worse. then
especially because it's happening to real people.
Because it's real, right? Yeah. Exactly that, because it's real. You know?
I do wonder if, though, the question why horror is less common these days, because I think over the last 10, 15 years, mainstream media, at least in TV, has got so much darker and more intense than it ever was before. I wonder if it's become more acceptable. Like, we're rewatching Game of Thrones. Michelle's never seen it, so no spoilers. But like the content that is in that compared to what would have been on TV, even just like a few years before
that's an HBO show. Yeah, and I was going to say True Blood, which was also HBO.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, there's so much. I remember the shift in television when I have moments, I can't say specifically what they were, but I would see something shown and be like, whoa.
Yeah.
They've never done that before. Like, they can show that now.
Yeah.
And that's happened several times over the last, decade and a half.
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest taboos, certainly on UK television, was male nudity, and Game of Thrones obviously just doesn't really care about that very much. It just goes there any which way,
It's not exactly balanced. There's a lot more female nudity than there is.
We're not quite there yet. No, we're still not quite there yet.
I don't know. Men still rule the world, so I don't know if we're going to see a bunch of dong.
Yeah, more's the pity, right? More's the pity. Oh well. But we've had a couple of sort of like television revolutions in this country that have allowed for that sort of thing. One of them was Queer as Folk, obviously.
Yeah.
Which
I never properly watched it. I saw the first episode, but at the time I think it was a bit too challenging for me. Now I could perfectly happily watch it, but yeah, that was pretty radical, wasn't it? Channel 4. At the
time, it was absolutely revolutionary. I mean, that certainly in the gay community, to see us on screen like that. Like, just being us, just like really by a gay writer, often with gay actors and whatnot, just actually doing what we do, being who we are, was amazing.
Yeah,
it really was. It really was a moment, I do recall at the time watching an interview with Russell T Davies where he had actually exposed himself to an audience who were critical of it, so he was there to answer questions from people who were maybe a bit sort of moral-minded, who maybe sort of like the aftermath of Mary Whitehouse and her crusade, and his answers were fantastic. I mean, he was saying things like with regards to the fairly explicit sex scenes in that show. So he was saying, well, how many of you have done that with your wives or your girlfriends? And all the hands went up, and he went, well, yes. There you are. There you are.
Yeah. A natural thing.
It was a fantastic way of softening those prejudices, And by the end of the interview, he kind of had the audience eating out of the palm of his hand, They were very charmed. And you could almost feel that there was a sea change,
Yeah.
It was really beautiful.
I don't think it's a spoiler, but I almost want to say, like, compared to back then, the things that are now loved, like, have you been watching The Last of Us?
I haven't yet. I've heard so much about it, but I really do want to get down and watch it at some point.
Well, the fact that back then it was considered shocking, while some of the content in that is not explicit, the fact that it's basically one of the greatest things that I've ever seen on screen does tend to show how far we have come in terms of how comfortable the public is with varied sexualities.
Yeah,
without spoilers.
And of course also images of horror, right? I mean, not having watched it, but I've heard quite a lot about it, and it is pretty horrific, right? It's a grim show.
Yeah, the fungal people are pretty awesome. I mean, there's a lot worse stuff in Game of Thrones from like
the mold crew.
Old mushroom head.
Did you play the video game at all?
Oh, it's one of my favourites, if not my favourite. I love the second one as well.
I played it as much as I could, but it really creeped me out, so I actually stopped it. I get scared pretty easily for someone who absolutely adores horror.
It's different with a video game, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's because you are interacting with it more than just reading a book. Yeah.
I mean, do you guys remember, like, in the mid to late 1990s, when, of course, video games became 3D and suddenly you could have like proper voice acting, and they were closer to sort of cinematic experiences than they'd ever been before. And we had that horror revolution where suddenly, like, survival horror came along. You had Resident Evil, you had Silent Hill, and suddenly it was an established genre, you know, whereas before it was completely taboo. There were horror video games before, but they were very few and far between. In the UK, they were often censored to hell and back if they were released at all, and they often caused a bit of stir in the tabloids, you know.
Oh god, yeah, definitely. I was going to say, Doom made me jump. One of the demons appeared, but everyone remembers that fucking dog in the first Resident Evil. If anyone says they didn't jump at that the first time, I call bullshit.
Absolutely. I mean, like, we've never seen
the very early sequence of the game. It just jumps through a window, and because, as George was saying,
scares the shit out of you.
Yeah, before that game, I'd never really seen.
You're like, so this is how it's gonna go. Okay.
Yeah, there's something about the way it's so brilliantly done, because of course technology was quite limited back then. They were just experimenting with 3 dimensions at that point. Game developers didn't really know what they were doing as such. The way Resi got around it was by using fixed camera angles. So the camera didn't move at all wherever you were. You just had a fixed camera angle over whatever room or corridor you were in. But they used that. They used that to emphasize the horror. So the camera angles are often slightly tilted or slightly, so you had blind turns and whatnot. You couldn't quite see down the corridors, and that made it really scary. Yeah, really scary. It
was that made the jump scare with the dog so effective, because if I remember it rightly, your character is at the far end of the corridor.
That's right.
And then you're walking towards the camera, and then the camera changes, and you're right next to the window that the dog jumps out at.
But you're just not expecting it, because the corridor feels like a safe space. It's really cleverly done. It feels like the kind of area where you're not necessarily going to encounter anything. It feels transitional. And if I remember correctly, it's silent as well up until the dog jumps through the window. And then, of course, you get smashing glass, and you get a musical chord coming through as well. The panic, the sheer panic, it's just brilliant, utterly brilliant.
And now look where it's come. Now we're playing things like Visage and Madison and Resident Evil 7 on VR.
Yeah, oh my god.
Outlast.
Yeah. You just got like the 3 that have had the most profound effect on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Visage, that one. I can't believe I finished that. I honestly can't believe I finished it. The horror in that is so oppressive.
It's pretty grim. Yeah,
I'm
on the 3rd chapter at the moment.
Are you using a walkthrough?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have a clue what to do. No, some of it is so
otherwise
obscure.
you just wander around and happen upon the next step.
Yeah,
I tried,
or not, or never. Just wander forever
in the dark.
In the dark.
I really did try to do as much as I could without a walkthrough, but it's impossible. It's the puzzles are so obscure, and where you've got to go, where just knowing what part of the house you need to be in and what you need to trigger. But I will say the horror in that game, it's something else. It really is something else. I cannot remember feeling so oppressed before in a video game, and actually having to stop playing because it was actually having an effect.
Do you remember any of those parts?
Yeah, oh absolutely. There's a bit where I was exploring the office upstairs, and I was just wandering around, you know, looking in drawers and whatnot, and as I turned and looked out the door, I saw just disappearing around the corner the top of her head with eyes and fingers just disappearing. And I do recall, I was recording it at the time, shrieking. Absolutely shrieking, swearing profusely, and running my character back into the room going, no.
That sounds like Blue Knees.
It does sound like Blue Knees. Yeah, from Madison.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that in Visage yet. Maybe I've got that to look forward to.
Oh, it was horrible. That moment really did for me. I didn't want to go out.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't want to go out onto the landing again because I didn't know what was going to be out there. But oh my god, Blue Knees in Madison.
Yeah.
I can still hear the song.
Can't.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Won't put it back in your head.
So yeah, now that we are together, the amount of horror that I am consuming has definitely increased, because now I know that I'm with someone who, whenever I am going to say, do you fancy a horror film? You know,
I'm not going to say no. There's just no way I'm going to say no.
Fantastic. I mean, this is actually brilliant. The dynamic is awesome, right? The fact that you come from different areas of horror, and the fact you have different influences and now can inform one another.
Yeah, I can't divulge what it exactly was, because it's a secret project of Michelle's. But I was gaming with friends yesterday and looked over at the research that she was doing and just burst out laughing. Just like, what is going on?
Just a Thursday night reading absolute fucking depravity.
Yeah. The worst. Yeah, so it's pretty wonderful.
It's always a problem for like horror writers, isn't it? You know, when you're actually doing research, you really, really, really don't want anyone looking over your search history.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely on watch lists because of a book I've tried to write on terrorism. But yeah, no doubt, how to bury bodies and stuff like that.
Yeah, but we just have conversations over dinner about all sorts of nasty stuff, and you know, he writes much more extreme horror than I do, and I have the pleasure of reading his stuff before he publishes it, and you know, it's not what I would write, but I appreciate the way he writes, the way he tells the story. Yeah, but it's been great because his skills are different than mine. I think we have different strengths as far as our writing goes, and like we are working on something together to hopefully like just have an amazing product with like all of the value from both of our.
I was going to ask, actually. Okay. I was going to ask. I mean, is there something that you guys are collaborating on that, you know, it has both of you in it?
I've had some wine. Spoiler.
We weren't going to say, but Michelle just did.
Yeah.
Well, you can't know at all what it's about.
No
one can know.
But yes, there is stuff in our future that will have passed through both of our hands. Let's just say, definitely.
That's awesome. Yeah. That I so look forward to reading that.
I think you'll very much appreciate Michelle's writing. Having read your Strange Playgrounds,
thank you.
Although they're different, they both have a very literary bent to them. So I think you'll really appreciate Michelle's writing for sure.
Oh, I will seek that out then. It's definitely where my interests lie.
Old Farmhouses of the North. That would be my recommendation to you.
Old Farmhouses of the North. Okie dokie. I will check that out. I'll definitely check that out.
I did. I always accidentally say something like the last
farmhouse on the left.
That's a different thing entirely, right?
His brain is destroyed by thriller titles that are all the same.
That's like the low rent UK Wes Craven knockoff, right?
Yeah, pretty much. The Cornish one, the last farmhouse on the left.
You know what? It just won't. I don't think it'd be quite the same with Cornish accents and whatnot.
No, maybe not. But I would watch the shit out of it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I must admit, it would have the quality of like one of the Cornetto trilogy, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But is there anything you've seen recently, guys, or sort of experienced recently that has really gotten your attention?
I thought last year was an amazing year for horror movies, so we can certainly talk about that.
Speak No Evil.
Oh man, for heavy horror, Speak No Evil is stunning. Did you see that?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my goodness.
Is that one? Is that a recommendation? Yeah.
It's
very heavy.
It's human monsters. There's nothing magical or anything about it. It's just super brutal and torturous.
Yeah,
to watch.
Funny Games territory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really that far?
Definitely that heavy.
Oh, wow. Yeah. May have to build up.
It's not a meta film. It's much more about the awkwardness of being in a situation where you know that something isn't right, but you haven't quite seen enough to speak out about it.
It's commentary on politeness.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it gets dark.
It gets so dark.
Oh, I do like the sound of that, though.
I think my mouth was just hanging open at the end.
Yeah, I was figuratively on the edge of my seat the whole movie.
Yeah.
It was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
What other good ones were there last year? It was a brilliant
You
year
like
for it.
Barbarian?
Barbarian I did like, but Smile. You didn't like it as much. That was my number one.
I enjoyed it, but it wasn't. I'm still surprised that it's his number one.
Yeah, I went to the cinema, and like games shake me up, but movies very rarely do. But Smile absolutely did. It's like, it feels like a Conjuring type movie in some ways, but taken to its absolute darkest and most mean-spirited kind of conclusion. And there are moments in it and it's supernatural, so it's ooky kooky stuff, and I don't believe in any of that. Like, Speak No Evil is far more genuinely terrifying, but there are bits in that film that feel like genuine evil. And I don't believe in evil or any of it, but it's just so malicious and cruel. And the sound design in that film is truly something to behold. Oh, Pearl.
Terrifier 2.
Terrifier 2.
Terrifier, yes, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that very much. Yeah. But yeah, with Smile, I found it had something that is kind of rare in horror films these days, but it had that sense of dirt about it, of like spiritual grime, where it leaves you feeling soiled for having watched it.
Yeah, certainly elements of it, definitely.
It's a strange feeling. It's not necessarily a pleasant feeling, but I find myself gravitating towards work that can do that. Yeah,
me too, for sure. Like, I saw the poster and wasn't really expecting much, so I went with my friend Matthew Cash, the fellow horror writer as well.
Yeah.
And we just went to hang out and see each other. But when I sat down to it, and there's the opening death, and I realized very quickly that this is a film actually about trauma. It very quickly really conjured its spell on me, and I loved it.
I must admit, I mean, when I saw the trailer, I wasn't necessarily looking forward to it. I saw the trailer and thought, the way the trailer is cut together, it doesn't look that interesting. It looks a bit humdrum. It looks a bit sort of also ran. But the film itself, I loved. I really, really enjoyed, very much for the same reasons that you said, Jonathan. It's the filth of it. It's that nihilism that it has. I find that very, very attractive sometimes in horror. Pet Sematary has it in spades, obviously, where there is nothing good. The metaphysics of that film is just repulsive.
There is no hope in that film.
No. There's just metaphysical evil, and that's it. And it has no rhyme or reason. It does it for what it wants to do. It just does it. It's elemental malevolence. Oof.
And it's unstoppable as well.
Yeah, it's just a little machine chugging along.
And it's going to keep going, much like real trauma.
Or the fungus in Last of Us. It's just a thing that seeks to spread and finds any mode or manner in which to do that.
It's sort of mindless and consumptive. There's something very, very interesting about that as the subject for horror.
I think it's the subject of many different horrors, but with that one, it's so overt and so suffocating.
And the film revels in it as well. It loves it. It loves the dirt and the filth and the blood and the pain, the suffering, the fear. It just revels in it, and it makes it almost like sadistic.
Oh God, definitely. Yeah, truly sadistic. Michelle's just pulled up a list of movies from last year. There were so many. Hatching. How good was Hatching?
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of Hatching, or did you see Hatching?
No, never saw that one.
Absolutely brilliant. Like, that's kind of satirical, I would say as well. But it's more like a really twisted fairy tale turned body horror. A girl. Does she? What? Oh yeah, that's it.
No. Her mother kills a bird that gets into the house.
Yeah.
And
we can't really spoil it, can we? In the trailer, you see that she protects an egg.
Deeply impacts her, and then she feels like she needs to, protect the babies of this thing that was killed by her mother, and it just becomes something...
Yeah, I would say
something else.
Yeah, I would say if you're tempted to watch it, don't watch the trailer. I'm so opposed to trailers now because they spoil stuff that would have real impact if you didn't have it. But,
I must say, like getting old man get off my lawn hat on, the art of making good trailers is dead. It's utterly dead.
No, they just always have spoilers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I like watching them after the movie now to be grateful that I didn't see it and have bits spoiled. Like my favourite scare in Smile was spoiled in the trailer. Thankfully I didn't see it beforehand.
There's awful tendency for them to give you like key plot points. Plot points in the trailer. It's like,
Yeah, stuff that might not happen for another hour, like an hour into the movie. That's when something happens.
Yeah, why you're supposed to tempt me, tease me, draw me in, not show me the whole damn movie in clip notes. You know,
absolutely.
That's often what gets other people who are only casual fans to go and see stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, they're catering to that audience. For sure.
Of course, with horror, of course, it has that effect of cushioning the film as well. It makes it safer if you've shown everyone, oh, well, this is what it is. This is the tone. These are the
this
key
is what you're in for.
It's like, oh, please. I always go back to...
Let me crap my pants, please.
Absolutely.
Let me crap my pants
feel bad.
Let me squirm in my seat and, be upset in peace, please.
Real time. I want to be immersed in it, and I want to feel that guttural, that reaction, that just deep thing that if you know going in what a visual is going to be and you're anticipating it, and it just loses all the strength of the imagery. And
I think for me, you just hit it right on the head, Michelle, which is wanting to feel. It's wanting to feel, right? And with regards to cinema, I don't necessarily mind what a film makes me feel. If it makes me feel despair, if it makes me feel anxiety, well, good. That's what it's designed to do. Wonderful. What I really dislike is that sort of like Teflon cinema where everything is almost like produced by committee, it's edited by test audience, and it creates this anodyne product which doesn't want you to feel anything. It just wants to give you the familiar beats over and over and over and over
like writing a book by formula.
Exactly that.
I mean, I'm going to push back a little bit and just say sometimes that can be fun. Like, they're not my favourite type of movies, but stuff like Insidious and The Conjuring, like, they are slick, very carefully marketed products, and sometimes I just want a bit of a ghost train ride.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong.
Coaster.
That's what it is. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, good popcorn cinema is great, right? I mean, give me a good B movie any day of the week that knows what it's doing and that is aware of itself and is just trying to be a good B movie. Great, that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. I mean, The Conjuring I really didn't like. I couldn't get on with that one. For lots of different reasons, and not least of which is the fact that it lionized those assholes, the Warrens. But
I don't know why they're pricks, but I've heard that they're pricks.
Oh, unbelievable! I mean, just the worst con artists.
Oh, really?
Oh, the worst con artists imaginable. The Warrens, and the way they preyed on vulnerable people. Families who are having problems, who were often lacking in education and often having significant problems in and of themselves, and then telling them, oh no, it's a demon, it's a ghost, and we can help you if you give us the book rights.
We're going to seance the autism out of your child.
Oh, God.
Yep. There was even a gentleman.
So are they making money if I watch one of their films, which are admittedly crappy?
I mean, fortunately, they're not around anymore. They're in whatever spiritual realm they claim to be able to access once upon a time is where they are.
I also wanted to mention that and Pearl.
And this, but you haven't seen it yet.
I have not seen that, no. There were so many movies that we liked yesterday that we couldn't not mention Men and also, Pearl. Did you see either or both of those?
I didn't, unfortunately.
You better be taking notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally in, absolutely. I mean, I know I need to watch The Last of Us. That is a definite for me. But I will definitely go and watch these.
So, Pearl is the prequel to X, and I enjoyed X. I really like the director, Ty West. Mm-hmm. He does quite slow-paced, atmospheric pieces. He did The Innkeepers. Have you ever saw that?
I loved it.
Yeah. So X, I thought was good, but Pearl is on such another level.
Yeah.
And is it Mia Goth?
Yeah.
she is a revelation. I want to see her in more horror stuff because, like, she does this incredible monologue.
A single shot.
Yeah, that just explains exactly who she is, and it is so powerful and so unexpected for a film that is essentially a bit of a slasher film, kind of, I guess. But absolutely elevated it. Yeah, that whole sequence was fantastic. And Men, truly nightmarish. A24, how on earth do you explain it? I guess it's all of the female experience.
Yeah, the body horror of the female experience.
That sounds fantastic to me. Yeah. That's emblematic of something we are starting to see, right? Which is just the diversification of horror. There are just so many more voices now, and that's largely thanks to like the small press and the independent movie market. There are so many more voices out there now.
Well, and we're seeing some really good like allegorical pieces that really have a strong message being portrayed in a super creative and weird way.
Yeah. Very good.
And I was going to mention, though I won't say too much about it, it's a witch movie called You Won't Be Alone. Super slow burn. I mean, even slower than like The Witch.
So that's a slow burn. That's a real slow burn.
But very emotional. Like if you want to feel something, I think I cried at the end of that one.
You cry at adverts.
No, that's for me. That's a massive recommendation. I like my slow burn horror. I really do.
So amazing year for horror, and those are some of the top ones that we watch.
And and I mean, there's even more we could pick from it, but that's there's just so many to choose from.
Nope sucked. So
I
haven't seen Nope, which is
my sister and her guy. They loved it, and I tend to do this thing when I watch movies, just because I'm a writer. Is that I try to find the hidden meaning, what's being said with them not coming out and just saying it. And so I enjoyed it for how I could interpret it, but just as a straight movie, I think it had some really good fun moments, like that guy from The Walking Dead, that actor who played, I think his name was Glenn in The Walking Dead, when he's like that cowboy guy. His character was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm being harsh. It didn't suck at all. I think I just didn't get it, and I wasn't in the right mood for it. It felt long and sprawling, and I didn't understand the significance of certain elements that were there. But I can't say if you haven't watched it, I won't spoil it. But like
The Menu,
loved The Menu.
Oh, loved it. Desperately wanted a cheeseburger afterwards.
Oh, it looked like a good burger, didn't it? Yeah.
Craving for burger after that was unbelievable.
That's what I'd love to see.
Yeah.
But that's another really good example. I mean, I went into that almost blind. I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know whether it was going to be a comedy or a horror film or what. And it turns out it's kind of a mixture of lots of different things.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
I wasn't expecting it to be as overtly horrific as it gets at points, or as overtly funny.
Like I knew that if they were doing, because the trailer shows that it's going to be both funny and horrific, so I knew what to expect. But the two main actors, Ralph Fiennes and I can't remember her name, both of them are
the girl from Queen's
Gambit.
Yeah.
I knew that it was going to be a movie that I would absolutely want to see, and I don't know if it'll be one that I return to, but I did thoroughly enjoy it.
Deadstream.
That's a fun one. Yeah.
Deadstream.
It was almost perfect.
It was fun.
If the special effects had been less cheesy, it was tense, hilarious. The main character was just incredible.
Yeah. The actor who plays him was so funny, wasn't he?
Yeah, it just got a little spoiled by silly effects and stuff. They went too cheesy, but it was very entertaining, and I got creeped out. There were a few pretty creepy moments.
I know you did, but yeah, it was too knockabout and it felt like a comedy to me. That was why it didn't creep me out. That was all. And because it wasn't visage.
But I feel like the juxtaposition of a scare or something haunting against a backdrop of mostly comedy made it harder and scarier for me to watch, because you relax a little bit and you're like, okay, it's just silly. And then suddenly something terrifying happens, and it's so far you know, like left field, like just you don't expect it, even though you know something's coming, but it didn't have the traditional like warning of like music and things like that. They did a lot of tricking where you think something's going to happen, and then it doesn't, and then it doesn't, and then it does, you know, like it was just so well pulled off for me.
Yeah, highly recommended if you want a fun one, definitely.
Yeah. It's the oddest thing. A lot of children's cartoons do that exact thing these days. A lot of the cartoons that are created for streaming platforms, like Centaur World, for example, on Netflix, that is insane. It's this bubbly, silly, almost like Warner Brothers Looney Tune kind of comedy cartoon. And then towards the end of the first season, you just get these images of Lovecraftian horror that are jaw-dropping. Absolutely jaw-dropping. You cannot believe that these things are occurring in this previously quite bubbly, silly, funny, really slapsticky cartoon that has musical numbers and like rainbows and whatnot, is primary coloured. It's quite incredible.
Centaur World.
Yeah, it's an odd one. It's really strange.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out.
It's your mileage may vary because it is very it's very Warner Brothers, it's very Looney Tunes, and it's quite long, that first season. I think it's like 12 episodes.
I mean,
so whether you can
Looney Tunes and
so you might be all right.
I loved that stuff.
So you might be all right then. You might be okay.
Like the Cartoon Network used to do like an hour of those cartoons, and I'd watch it like at least several times a week. Daffy Duck and
Our
Bugs
American
Bunny.
Cartoons.
Oh yeah,
of course. Kind of grew up.
And they had genuinely creepy stuff in them as well. I always used to love the creepy episodes of them.
I was like some of the dynamics sometimes are really dark. There's some episodes that are really depressing and really strange, you know.
Well, so yeah, is it the Daffy Duck one when he's in Nazi Germany, the anti-war one?
I think that's Donald Duck. I think that's a Disney one, isn't it?
You're mixing your duck sauce.
I think that's a Disney one. Yeah.
I thought I did that last time.
Maybe
it was me.
Okay. I can't remember any depressing ones, I must admit, but I do remember getting excited whenever oh god, what's his name? The guy who speaks like this would sometimes pop up as like a mad scientist or a creepy character in the Bugs Bunny ones. Oh, what's his name? Well, anyway, whenever they did themed episodes where there's something terrifying going on, I always used to get excited. Have you got it there? Oh, Peter Lorre. There we go.
Peter Lorre, yes. And actually, Warner Brothers did a fantastic, like, animated version of him as well.
Yeah. So that's worth checking out. I'll check out Centaur.
Centaur World, yeah. It's very, very peculiar. It's very peculiar. It starts out looking like it's going to be sort of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, that it's going to be like this epic, this sort of mythological epic. Even the animation is designed to make it look like Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then it shifts drastically into this primary colored, all singing, all dancing, rainbows everywhere, silly magic, slapstick Warner Brothers cartoon, and then it shifts again towards the end into an Eldritch Nightmare. Yeah, it is the oddest thing. And the creators clearly have they take a great love in blindsiding their audiences, into leading them into thinking they're watching something which they are very much not. Kind of clever, yeah, for a children's cartoon.
And for something completely different.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, certainly intriguing. Cool. Okay.
But then again, I have noticed that is happening in children's media quite a lot recently. I mean, it's actually
the ADHD. They have to keep them interested by keeping it mixed up.
Keeping it mixed up, yeah. But it's like that.
Lost their attention. Time to
go bring on the Lovecraft.
Yeah, bring on the Lovecraft. It's that thing of like infiltrating. Infiltrating the darker media and ideas via something that's ostensibly comedic. I mean, Adventure Time did that beautifully. Beautifully. Again, a show that when you sit down and watch it, it feels like it's just a silly cartoon. And then you start to get bits of back mythology, just little drip feeds and suggestions of back mythology. and it accrues and accrues and accrues as the show goes on, until it becomes this incredibly dark, complex, post-apocalyptic story. It's really very clever. Very clever.
Just building future horror lovers.
Yep, that's exactly what it's doing. It's exactly what it's doing.
I think we live in a very pessimistic age where it's
preparing
it's
them
suitable.
for just real life.
Yeah, all that.
Better than they do in school.
Yeah. I feel like the attitude in both TV and the more readily available quality horror has grown since 2000. And I think it genuinely is like a post 9/11 thing where the Western world got a massive slap across the face. And people became a lot more pessimistic, and the rise of the internet as well, allowing us to, access the absolute horrors of the world at the single click of a button or the typing of a word. I think it's a lot more acceptable to be into far, far darker things these days. So it actually doesn't surprise me that it's creeping into kids' media as well.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
Perhaps like preparing them.
You're absolutely right. I think there's something to be said for like gradual exposure in that regard. I mean, not only do we live many of our horrors like from day to day, but like you say, we witness them. They are everywhere. They're almost like thrown. It's almost aggressive, isn't it? You can't go onto social media without seeing a news feed or a recommended bar that has something horrific in it.
Yeah. When I was waiting for my visa to come here to England, I was getting so stressed about the things going on, the war in Ukraine and stuff, and not knowing when we would get to be together.
Of course.
I had to unsubscribe from like a news thing that popped up in my browser every time I used it. I had to turn it off because it was giving me so much anxiety seeing stuff about climate change and war and COVID. And I was just like, I cannot handle this. Like, where is there any good news in this? It's all just terrible stuff.
Yeah,
but it is fascinating, isn't it? Because I mean, I was talking to Kit Power about this when we did our episode of Our Lives in Horror, but our generation has kind of been bombarded with that from the get-go. I mean, even our cartoons when we were kids often had that subject matter in it. I mean, do you remember stuff like Captain Planet and whatnot?
Yeah.
Which is effectively telling you, oh yes, the world is burning and the world is being destroyed, and it's like, here you are, 8-year-olds, 5-year-olds, you deal with it. I mean, the whole catchphrase of Captain Planet was "the power is yours," and of course, we've learned since that is very much a lie. It is not.
Yeah, I just saw a video of some very young kids, maybe 11, 10-year-olds, going to talk to a senator about climate change and the facts about it and presenting them to her, and she just stopped them talking. Yeah. This old woman, 85, 90. Just stopped them talking in the middle of their speech to her and said, basically just shut them down. I've been doing this. I got elected. I know what I'm doing. And then the little girl's like, it's like 12 years until like we can't reverse this anymore. And the old woman just was like, we know what we're doing.
She'll be dead soon. So things are looking up.
We need more younger people in politics.
Yeah. Absolutely we do.
This is why I like the less real horrors. No. I like the horror movies, but I think it's very important to take care of yourselves when you're consuming real life
definitely.
Horror. The news and, I'm glad that things like gore sites are far less common now, because when the internet exploded, that's... I've said this like many times, like when I was a kid, like my parents were obviously careful about the media that I experienced, but there was this very common thing, especially with young boys, where you would find like a top shelf magazine in a bush or something like that. And I remember finding that. And that was like the most extreme thing that my young brain could imagine, just explicit nudity. And I think nowadays, when there are kids who are my age, back when I was discovering a nudie magazine in a bush, they're seeing
a murder.
Yeah, I was going to say it's small potatoes, isn't it? I mean, it's
enormously.
The whole timeline has like shifted to like younger and younger, and
absolutely,
it terrifies me what kids are being exposed to. Now, way younger. I mean, they're seeing stuff that I don't really think anyone should revel in at all. No. Even adult things that they're seeing, that they can't process that sort of thing now. It's this whole as you say, everything's sped up.
Yeah, and it's not just like the visually horrific, like violence and whatnot. It's the pressures as well, isn't it? They're so much more aware of the things that are happening because of media exposure. They're so much more aware than we ever were. I mean, by comparison, we were totally insulated in our little bubbles, completely unaware of what was going on in the wider world. And it's creating this mass anxiety. The only positive I can see from that is if it becomes action, if it does become activism of some description, which we do need. Don't get me wrong, it's something we desperately need at this point. But it's also having incredible effects on mental health and development, like incredibly negative effects. And then, of course, there's the stuff that you just couldn't help but notice. There's COVID and whatnot, obviously, which you just couldn't help but be exposed to. And that is something we're going to see have incredible effects down the line. Kids who were of school age during the lockdowns, kids who were born in the lockdowns, It's something my friends who are teachers have been talking to me about. They have noticed an incredible difference since going back to work, an incredible difference in levels of anxiety, just general mental health problems.
Really?
Yeah, it's significant.
But
that makes me feel a little bit better, though, because I've been having increased anxiety and stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of us has, to be honest.
The lockdown and the being apart, or the threat of the pandemic, or maybe a combination of all these.
I imagine it's a combination of all of it, and of course, being locked at home, one of the only outlets that they would have had would have been social media, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which has probably not helped at all. And of course, you have to bear in mind what was going on politically during that period as well.
Yeah.
Wasn't going to help at all in this country or in the US.
No. Oh dear. We've drifted into away from the entertainment side of horror into the true
real life
dark heart of it.
But it is an interesting thing. I think it's something that horror serves, to be perfectly honest. If you want to look at it in purely functional terms, it is a kind of waking nightmare, isn't it? It allows culture to process these things, on an emotional level, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, you can always see what the main fears of a culture or a country were when a movie comes out. When you compare it to the events that were contemporary at the time, they're often reflected in the movies.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at that stretch of US movies from sort of like the late 1960s right through to the 1980s, and almost every single one of them is a Vietnam film at heart. Almost every single one of them is about Vietnam. It's about the death of the American dream and so on and so forth. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, there's I'm going to have to look it up, the name of it. There's a really good movie on Shudder about is it called Horror Noir, like the history of black horror.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
I'm just gonna check if I've got the name right, but that really charts. Yeah, Horror Noir: A History of Black Horror. That really charts the way that cinema from mainly black directors and actors reflected the horrors of history, as well as the things that were happening at the time.
Yeah,
I think that's always going to be the case. Whatever is the current zeitgeist, it's going to be absolutely ripe for tearing apart and analysing through horror films.
Absolutely. And what I find really fascinating is when a lot of the creators of horror of any particular era are interviewed, they often say that we didn't consciously realize we were doing it. It was just in culture, it was in us, and that's what we created. That's what we were reflecting. We didn't know this. It was just there, implicit in the material. I think it was an interview with John Carpenter, and he was talking about The Thing, and he was saying we didn't know we were doing this film that had all of these resonances with like escalating awareness of things like cancer and AIDS and whatnot. We had no idea we were doing that. But when you look at the material, it's like, well, yeah, evidently it's there.
Because I think it's this subconscious feeling that something needs to be said.
Yeah.
How to say it in a way that it will be more palatable to a wider audience. And so, yeah, whether you intend to tell a story about a specific thing going on in the world or not, like you were saying, I almost called you Jonathan. We're all a product of our surroundings and our environment and the experiences that we're having. And so, major events and cultural shifts and struggles that we're going through as humanity on a larger scale are gonna sneak in. There's just no way we can't impart
help it,
our experience and our fears.
Oh, definitely. It's always about that. Yeah, it should be anyway. Like, I've experienced it in my own, like, small way, but with the success of what Good Girls do, I think that is a lot to do with the fact that people are talking, like, post-Me Too era, people are talking about the dynamics between however many genders, men and women in this case, and it's ridden that wave completely unexpectedly. And as you said at the time, I didn't know. I thought I was doing it completely from a personal level because I've known a number of people who have been harmed, but it was a way to confront that absolute horror. So yeah, I've experienced that myself in my own writing to an extent.
And it's kind of more special too if you don't intend to resonate with a particular crowd or on a particular issue, but something that you write does. It just does and is that to a group of people who feel less seen in their day-to-day lives, who feel like they need more voices speaking about their experiences. So I think it's kind of cool to stumble upon.
Yeah, I was just really fucking angry.
Yeah.
That was all it was. I was very angry and wanted to write something to cleanse myself of that.
Yeah, it's funny how often that occurs as well.
A lot of angry people out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how often that occurs in horror too. I mean, one of the angriest films I've ever seen is definitely the original Last House on the Left.
Yeah.
It's furious. I mean, it is just pure disappointed rage, isn't it? That is Wes Craven basically saying, I've been lied to my entire life. Every myth, every story I've ever been told, everything I've been told to have value in is bullshit. It's complete garbage, and it has been demonstrated to me by what my country is doing, effectively, what is happening around me in the world. And it's so explicit on the screen. I think that's what people are often reacting to with Last House on the Left. I mean, I know that it's a really grimy, violent, unpleasant film, but I think it's more the implication of it that people are reacting to, whether it's conscious or otherwise. It's the fact that it is calling into question standards of decency and taste and whatnot in a culture where violence is just the norm, where you have it on your newsreels all the damn time.
Did you know it was supposed to be even more explicit than it was?
Oh, really?
It was storyboarded to have hardcore levels of explicitness.
Wow.
I'm glad it didn't, because it's pretty much the only rape revenge film that I would happily watch again. It's not a subgenre that I particularly enjoy, despite having written one myself.
No, likewise.
But one of the things that I think is so impactful about that film, rather than the broader message, is the fact that the worst elements of the horror are contrasted with the playful, Keystone Cops, who are almost like comedy characters, and the oversaturated happiness of the parents making the birthday cake and stuff like that. And then you zap back, as you say. I imagine that was the comparison you were talking about, being lied to, seeing the underbelly and the truth of the situation is so much worse than the lie.
Yeah, I mean, even ostensibly very light, jaunty horror. I mean, I rewatched Poltergeist recently for another podcast that I'm going to be doing.
We watched that again recently.
One of my favorites. For me, that's an artifact of childhood. I remember having that on my mom's VHS shelf, and it was always a go-to. It was a case of, let's watch Poltergeist this afternoon. Carol Ann, this house is clear.
Yeah,
love it.
I used to say that all the time when I would close the bookstore at night on the overhead. When our customers in the store, and we loved it. All the stuff. This house is clear.
I didn't see it as a kid, so I was pleasantly surprised that when I watch it as an adult, it absolutely deserves its classic status.
Yeah, that was your first watch of it when we watched it?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, really? So you watched it as an adult? That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Still resonated, right?
Yeah, I remember going to a kid's party. We used to have like clowns, and the clown was talking to the other kids, saying, "Oh, did you see Poltergeist the other night?" And the other kids were like, "Yeah, it was amazing." And, like my mum was at the side of the room, and I looked over and gave her a dirty look because I wasn't allowed. And then a couple of years later, I was allowed to, read Graham Masterton and Clive Barker and stuff. So
yeah. Oh yeah, right. Like, Clive Barker's fine, but not Poltergeist. Right, all right.
It was 2 years later, to be fair.
Fair enough. But yeah, I mean, I was rewatching it, and it is such a beautiful film. I mean, I find it difficult sort of seeing past the sentiment that I have attached to it, because it is such an artifact of childhood. But it's the commentary of it that really struck me. I mean, ostensibly, you've got here this very jaunty, very sort of like ghost train ride, primary coloured extravaganza. It's like a carnival of horror, isn't it? Every set piece is colour, and it's big, it's bravura, it's right in your face. But underneath all that, you actually have this commentary about neoliberalism and capitalism and this gothic sensibility of the return of the repressed, right?
Yeah, because the graves are completely buried by they're built over, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah, the sort of Cuesta Verde.
The gravestones, but not the bodies.
That's exactly it. There's that great bit at the end where Stephen Freeling grabs the property developer, his boss, and is shrieking at him, "You only move the headstones!"
Yeah.
It's so good. The performances. Oh God, I just could not get over how much affection the film has for its characters.
They're real. There's an element to the dialogue that I was very pleasantly surprised by. It feels completely
very
naturalist.
natural. Yeah.
And like the little things, like when the parents are casually rolling a joint.
I love that scene.
It's barely even mentioned or anything in the film. It's just like,
but that is so real.
Yeah,
isn't it so real? You've got Stephen Freeling, the dad, like shirtless, just like sprawled out on the bed on his belly, reading a biography of Ronald Reagan, by the way, while in the background, you've got Diane just casually rolling a joint,
I love that too, because you don't see a lot of portrayal of parents as anything other than parents.
Yeah.
And so it was showing them as real people that separate from their children. Like that was such a nice touch, because then you feel even more for them as well, not just the kids.
The film takes a great deal of time establishing each and every one of the characters, but does it without too much emphasis, without too much weight. It doesn't sort of throw it in your face. It's just the casual interactions between the characters shows you who they are. And it's so brilliant. It's so wonderfully written.
Yeah, it feels far less contrived, the characterization, than a lot of films, for sure.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like they're showing me this so that I like them. They're showing me this so that I notice he's done that. Yeah, it doesn't feel quite like that.
The scene in the kitchen where they're testing the weird fields and scooting along the floor and stuff. I had forgotten that when we watched it again.
How excited the mum is.
Yeah.
Because Stephen's just come home, hasn't he? He's just come home from work, so he's a little bit sort of bedraggled, and he's a little bit, right, whatever's going on. Yeah, just let me. Yeah, just show me. It is wonderful. It is
and the naivety of the situation, because it starts out fun, and just builds into something so horrific. And what got me about it? In the pool.
Halloween. Yeah, the scene in the pool's amazing.
My goodness, and the big tree outside. Yeah, it's just a solid watch.
It'll be another Halloween watch this year, probably.
And it looks so good. I mean, the effects are beautiful in that film.
It does hold up.
Practical effects. Yay.
I would say 82, maybe.
Yes, it's 82. Mm-hmm. It is 1982.
Well, because it came out before we were born.
Me too. Yeah.
I've got a terrible memory. Apparently, I remember the years that films were.
1982, and then the sequel was 1986. So some quite a ways after, really.
Is it the sequel with the braces? The scene with the braces, or
yes, that's the sequel. The one with the Reverend Kane.
Watch it again, because I don't recall it.
It's an interesting film. It's flawed. It's got lots of problems, especially to a postmodern eye, to a present-day eye. I mean, it does do that whole thing. There's the magic Native American guy who knows everything about what's going on because he's a Native American. That's just what happens, right?
Of course, yes.
And his
Part of their culture.
Exactly. His whole purpose is to protect the white family, and it's kind of like, okay, fair enough. But even given those problems, it's a really interesting film. I mean, Julian Beck as the Reverend Kane, who's sort of the face of the evil, is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. He has such incredible presence, and he hardly does anything, really.
Does it have any links to the original?
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. In fact, it kind of it delves even deeper into the mythology of Cuesta Verde and why their house in particular seems to have been the target of this supernatural geyser that's just come up from under the ground. And it also gives a face to it. I mean, in the original film, you do have Tangier saying that there is something on the other side with Carol Ann. There is this thing that's talking to her like a child, that's keeping her close. That's the Reverend Kane. That's what it is. The beast is him.
Creepy.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah.
And it also has, I mean, it has some sequences that were designed by H.R. Giger.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, the sequel. Okay. Yeah, a couple.
Doubly interested.
And they are.
Have you seen that?
I have at some point, but my memory is garbage.
Yeah, we have awful memories, so we can rewatch things and replay things, and it's like we've never seen them before.
It's brand new.
It's worth a watch. It's not, it's not as bad as many sort of horror sequels of the era were. It does some interesting stuff, and it's largely because it's these characters again, who were just so wonderful to be around, just so lovely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we had a list of Halloween movies that we watched last year that were like a combination of new ones, but also like classics. So that'll probably be on regular annual rotation. The original Poltergeist, I imagine.
I mean, this is one of the odd things, isn't it, about growing up during that era? The fact that we have sentimental attachments to horror films and can often react to them in the ways that other people would react to, like childhood cartoons or whatever.
Yeah, 80s horror is amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It really is.
I haven't really got an affection for Cujo. I seem to remember that being a darker one.
But when I think about it, it is that kind of like a part of my childhood feeling that I get. It's because it was just when we were really starting to fall in love with creepy stuff. And it was like every moment we had where it was a new movie or like Goosebumps books or whatever.
Oh, yes!
Yeah, we grew up with Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and Are You Afraid of the Dark, which you guys
Of course.
Yeah, I love Afraid of the Dark.
Yeah. The Midnight Society,
someone gave us a little bit of the darkness, like it was just really special and exciting. And
yeah, there were a couple of really creepy episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark. The clown one, where some kid is dared to steal the cigar out of a fake clown in a fun house, and then he's haunted by the clown.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I really dug that. But then there's another one where it was the Tale of the X-Ray Specs. And I'm not going to be afraid of spoiling an Are You Afraid of the Dark thing, because I'm usually more careful. But that basically ends with our entire reality being consumed by darkness. I remember watching that being like, wow, that's intense.
Yeah, so like cheery afternoon Nickelodeon show. Entire reality being consumed by darkness. Great. And now here's Rocco's Modern Life, right?
In that at all? At some point, you and I?
Maybe. I know there's ghosts, so there are ghosts of people who have died, but I don't think there can have been anyone who's like scared to death or murdered or anything. I think it was a lot softer than that. Because the worst thing that happens with the cigar episode and the clown, and that was one of the scariest, is that a balloon gets inflated under a door and pops. That's like the height of terror.
Because you don't really see much in the actual episode, do you? I mean, obviously they were produced for a budget, so they had to be quite careful. And given the audience, of course, it's aimed at kids. But you don't really see a great deal in that episode. A lot of it is just insinuation. It sounds,
Yeah, you know that he's being chased by the clown, and the scary thing is that the only clown that you have seen is a model. It's like a mannequin type thing, so that makes it scarier because you don't see it. And so you're like,
ironically.
Is it a person? Is it this walking mannequin wooden thing with a clown head?
Come to life,
Yeah.
I remember that because it's like there is an implication towards the end that like the circus owner is kind of involved, isn't there? Because he actually he actually sort of almost hosts the story.
Oh,
he's kind of cigar chomping
at the end when he closes the door or something.
Like a narrator?
Well, no, because they're the narrators, the ones around the thing. But I feel like he almost bookends it, like when he does return the cigar, like it was all his plan along. Like even though it didn't actually achieve anything whatsoever.
Really, yeah. My goodness. I mean, like on this side of the pond, like in terms of horror, we had stuff like Nightmare, of course.
Absolutely love Nightmare.
Yeah, me too.
God, yeah, of course. Treguard. My friends still watch it. Like when I regularly go to. Yeah, well,
we watched it.
Yeah, sidestep to the left. Yeah,
castle thing.
That's the one.
So weird.
Where they wear the helmets. Sidestep left.
Like genuinely scary. Like genuinely tense, right? I mean, like the way if they lingered too long in a room, you'd get this chord of music or a heartbeat starting, and you get Treguard, you've lingered too long, team. And it's like, oh, something's coming. Oh, no.
Well, during those sequences, in the bottom left or right-hand corner of the screen, it starts off with a human face with armor on it, and slowly the armor and the flesh gets stripped away until it's just a skull staring with eyes.
The life force clock. Yeah, they had to replenish it by finding food in the dungeon and putting it in their knapsack. And if they didn't, then they sort of starved. That was their death, you know? Yeah. It was pretty damn creepy. There are some sequences, certainly in the early episodes, when they were still sort of testing the waters with it. They didn't really know what they were doing at the time, where some of the deaths are terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I remember, I think it may be the first death in the entire series. They take a wrong turn or they don't pick up some magic item or whatever, and they emerge into a cavern that's just dark. There's nothing in there. It's just darkness. And you can hear this weird clicking sound. And Treguard says, oh dear team, this darkness is made by something that doesn't like company. Even now it's making its dislike felt. And you don't see what happens to them. All you see is the life force meter counting down and the skull flaking away and this chord of music. And it's like, no, it's horrible. It's horrible.
It reminds me of like he would write the little paragraphs on the Escape the Dark Castle cards.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever heard of or played Escape the Dark Castle?
No, I don't know that one.
That's definitely horror influenced and would certainly appeal to any Nightmare fan.
It's a dice-based adventure game trying to escape a dark castle, and you have to battle all these enemies and collect objects, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, each time you move into a new room, it's very much like Nightmare, where just something grim or ghastly is appearing before you.
Brilliant. That sounds like loads of fun.
Yeah, and the only other kids one that I also wanted to mention, which I always wanted to love but kind of didn't, was Duckula.
Duckula! Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Stands up really well to an adult viewing, I've got to say. It's very funny.
Yeah, I rewatched a bit of it recently, and I think it was less so now. I'd almost built it in my head to be something that it wasn't. But I always kind of felt like it was quite a lonely cartoon. There wasn't anything particularly wacky about it. The music was in the background, but quite often the sounds that you hear are like the lonely whispering of the wind. That's kind of how I remember it. And he never really had any friends. He just had Nanny, who was funny. Yeah. And then Igor, who wants him to genuinely drink blood, and then everyone else wants to kill him.
Yeah, there is a very sort of British quality to Duckula in that the lead character is down and out. He's depressed, and he doesn't want to be where he is. He's almost every episode, the basis is Duckula doesn't want to be Count Duckula anymore. Yeah. He wants to go somewhere and be a movie star, or go somewhere and be a rock star, or just not be this anymore. And then you've got Igor trying to pull him back into tradition, of course. No, you're a vampire and you need to be a vampire. This is how you're supposed to act. And being himself, being perpetually defeated. And of course, Duckula's a vegetarian, of course, so he can't drink blood, you know. He's a vegetarian vampire duck.
It makes so much sense.
Makes perfect sense. Played by David Jason, of course. No, I love Duckula so much. The intro sequence is spectacular.
Yeah, I always preferred the opening credits, and the closing credits to the actual cartoon.
Yeah.
They were what I wanted the cartoon to be.
Well, it promises so much. I mean, the intro promises a horror cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the tropes, all of the images, all of the classic stuff of gothic horror, and then it's actually really silly and funny.
Yeah.
When you get
Trapdoor.
Trapdoor. Oh, but that is wonderful. That is just flat out wonderful.
Yeah, that's pure horror for kids. That one, all it was like bones and bugs and monsters and the guy who bellows down to Bert to bring him food, and he always cooks up these grotesque concoctions for him.
Yeah. What I love about it is just like
out of the trapdoor.
It's the invention of it. Like in every single, I mean, the episodes are only like 5-10 minutes long each. They're very, very short. But clearly they were just having a ball with molding things out of plasticine and animating them. Because in every single sequence, the screen is packed full of little worms and bugs and creepy crawlies that are all over the walls and moving. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And the trapdoor itself is such a great concept. The notion that in this castle where, I mean, the irony of it is nothing down the trapdoor is in any way as scary as him upstairs.
No, true.
Him upstairs is way scarier.
Yeah, so in fact, thinking about it, there were a lot of things that tickled that horror G-spot.
And that would have been like preschool as well. I mean, like Trapdoor I think was 1984, so that was the year I was born.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember watching it on TV, so it must have still, because I'm 83.
Or reruns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did run for quite a while.
Right. Okay.
It did run for quite a while on very young children's TV.
Yeah. It was always those horror ones that I dug. That, He-Man, and Thundercats.
Likewise. Although whereas Trapdoor stands up to an adult viewing because again it's genuinely funny, and really inventive. Do not watch Thundercats again. Sincerely, don't.
You've been warned.
Whatever's in your memory, hold on to it because it's better than the show.
I just remember hating Schnarf.
Everyone hated that. Was again. It's one of those strange tropes of 1980s children's cartoons, especially ones attached to toy franchises. There had to be that character, the Snarf, the Slimer, the Dungeons and Dragons, and
Orko.
Yeah. Oh God.
That thing in Star Wars, Jar Jar Binks.
I mean, that was a bit later on, but it plays a similar role.
Same type of role.
Very much that same character. Yes, very much. It's almost like they couldn't just tell an earnest story. There had to be like the comedy character just to soften it for children.
Well, it's like having a court gesture.
Yeah. But one that isn't funny in this case.
That's phenomenally annoying. I think a lot of that is the voice actor, to be fair. The Snarf voice is the most grating thing imaginable.
I've thought of one that I like, though, and that's Slimer.
Slimer's great. Slimer's actually got a little bit of pathos as well, because they actually do stuff with Slimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a role to play, whereas Snarf was just... vomits him. That said, Mum-Ra's great. Mum-Ra's a great villain.
Yeah, I remember I had Mum-Ra as a toy. You had to touch a bit of metal to his back, and then his eyes glowed. His
eyes lit up. Yes, I remember that. Again, one of those odd cartoon villains from the 1980s who was built up to be incredibly threatening, but actually was just a little bit of a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
Very much like Skeletor in He-Man.
Yeah, I don't know. There was one episode in Skeletor when he tries to drown an entire town, which I remember being quite shocking at the time.
That's pretty good going for Skeletor, to be honest. Most of the time, he's doing really silly stuff.
Yeah.
Despite having the capacity to just teleport into the castle and kill them all with his magic.
Don't let logic enter into this, James.
No, really, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. Mum-Ra's very much like that. It's like evil plan of the week. And it's always very silly and overly elaborate.
It's like Coyote and the Roadrunner in the Looney Tunes.
Always trying to chase after them.
Yeah, and doing things like building elaborate bombs and stuff to try and destroy it, and it just never.
Acme bombs.
Never.
All you need is a snare or a tripwire, right? That's all you need. And
or a gun.
Or a gun. That'd be
It's
great.
an American cartoon. Goodness sake.
I remember, like, when I was a kid, there was always a myth floating around, like, the schoolyard, that there was a lost episode where the coyote got the Roadrunner.
I feel like I've heard that, actually.
Yeah, like an urban myth.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't you kill to see that?
It's just a reel somewhere or something, and it's like, do not play.
Surely they did it.
Do not broadcast.
Never air.
Yeah, surely they did it. They must have done it at some point, even if it was just as a joke.
Yeah, just for fun.
You know, someone must have written a script where the coyote gets the Roadrunner, and it's very satisfying indeed.
It's the final episode that they ever air. He just murders and devours the Roadrunner.
He could eat it and he could say, tastes like chicken.
Yeah, he can actually speak for the first time ever. Yeah, wonderful.
Or at least hold up a sign that says
yeah, and have a little bird leg.
Well,
he wouldn't hold it. He had hands that worked like
he was
quite
stood up on both feet.
Yeah.
He had to have hands to hold up the sign that said help or oh no when he was standing over a cliff edge and then fall. Brilliant. Well, guys, thank you so much for this. This has been so much fun. Is there anything, before we go, is there anything you'd like to pimp out?
Well, I've got a release coming up in May, so not for another few months, and that's the sequel to What Good Girls Do. So that's going to be a full novel, so it's twice as long as the first one. Hopefully just as intense, but in a very different way, and it's going to be called What Good Men Do.
Oh, interesting.
And it's so good. So good.
What about you?
Well, Jonathan already mentioned earlier my most recent collection, Old Farmhouses of the North. I love that one. So
You're number one on Godless.
I'm about to say that.
Okay.
But I recently released a short story called When You Become a Body. And the ebook's available on Godless for just 99 cents. It's a little novelette. And yes, today it made #1 on new releases. It's been out for a couple of weeks, so I'm pretty proud that...
That's superb.
Yeah, that
Brilliant
it's still
stuff.
selling so well. It's not... It's literary horror, kind of dark speculative fiction. It's not super grotesque or anything, though there's some pretty icky moments in it. But yeah, it's getting rave reviews, and
I think there's shades of Black Mirror in it, and I know you're a fan of that, George.
I am indeed.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, guys, if you're interested in any of that, there will be links down below. As for myself, as per usual, you can find me hanging around here on the Exaggerated Elegy channel on YouTube. You can find links to all of my published work over at strangeplaygrounds.com. And if you fancy a chat, you can come and chat to me over at Twitter at Enigmatic Elegy. Guys, thank you so much. That was brilliant. And I hope to have you on again.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Loved
George. That was wicked.
No, it's
Have
been
a great
a blast. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey.
Good.